Yo, what is going on, Algebra 1? It's your teacher, Mr. Lopez, coming at you with another lesson from Chapter 12, Lesson 3 on measures of central tendency and dispersion. Our objective today is to find the mean, median, mode, and range of data points. And I think this is going to be a pretty easy lesson. I don't think we're going to have any struggles with this. So let's go ahead and just kind of look at a few definitions for us first. One way to summarize a set of data is to use a measure of central tendency. Tendency, by definition, it means an inclination towards a particular characteristic or type of behavior. So one of the reasons that we look at data in general is to try to find tendencies, to try to find patterns, to try to find commonalities between the data points to see if it really means something in a bigger picture. So we're going to talk about mean, median, and mode, because these are all measures of central tendency. They're all ways that statisticians or people who look at data, or maybe you in your future professional life, might look for meaning behind the data. Now, the measure of central tendency that best describes a data set may depend on whether the data set has an outlier. An outlier is the data value that is like much bigger or much smaller than the rest of the numbers. It doesn't really fit in. And when it comes to data collection, oftentimes there are outliers where most of the data points, they all kind of fit together and they make sense. Like if I was measuring the heights of the people in your class and I'm measuring general heights, 5'1", 5'2", 5'2", 5'4", 5'7", those are all relatively similar within a few inches of each other. But if I measure somebody who's like 7'8", then that person might be an outlier. That height is much greater than the other numbers. All right, and outliers, they can skew the data. They can make the data look a certain way. Like here's a very practical example from something that might happen in our class, where I might give a quiz one day, and the average for the class was, for most of the classes, like 82%, where people are getting 82, a little bit higher, a little bit lower. But if somebody skips the quiz and gets a 0 on it because they didn't do it, now that's going to bring the average down. That 0% would be an outlier. All right, it doesn't really fit in with the other data points, but it was collected, so it does affect the overall average, and we have to kind of keep that in mind. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at some of the key concepts for mean, median, and mode. Now here we should go ahead and take note about a few different ways that we can find measures of central tendency. The first thing we're going to talk about is the mean. Another word for the mean is more commonly known as an average. And this is just a typical average where you add the numbers together and divide them by the number of data points that you have. So if I was trying to find the average of these values, 3 plus 4 plus 5, I would add them together and divide it by how many data points we have, which is 3, which would give me 3 plus 4 is 7 plus 5 is 12. 12 divided by 3 is 4. So the mean of these values is 4, or the average is 4. So nothing really complicated here. This is a typical average that you guys have been doing for a very long time. A median, we should think of the word middle. All right, whenever you are looking for a median, you always want to think of the word middle. Like, in fact, in like ordinary life, when you guys start driving, or maybe when you're driving with your parents somewhere, that like little divider piece of concrete, the little island between the two opposing sides of traffic, that's called a median divider. All right, so it's just a thing in the middle. Now, if we ever have a median, all right, what we're looking for median is when we arrange our data value sets in order from smallest to biggest. So let's make up some data points. Like let's say I have 1, 3, 3, 5, 7, 8, and 10. I just made up some numbers. I want to find the number that's in the middle of all these data points. Well, I count how many we have. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So the number smack dab in the middle is the median. It's weird. It's kind of hard to write like this. All right. So the number in the middle is known as the median. All right, cool with that? Now, what would happen if so this is an odd amount, and obviously when you have an odd amount of numbers, you can just count the number in the middle. What would you do if you're trying to find the median of, like, let's say add another data point there. Let's add 12. All right. Now in the middle are two numbers. All right. I have three numbers on the left and three numbers on the right, and that puts two numbers in the middle. So the median would be the average of the two, or the number that's between them. If I add 5 plus 7 and divide it by 2 data points, I end up getting 6. So the median in this case would be 6. The number that's in the middle of these two numbers would be 6. All right. Mode, whenever we see the word mode, we want to think of the word most. It's the number that occurs the most. If I'm looking at these data points, which number occurs the most? Out of 1, 3, 3, 5, 7, 8, 10, 12, all right, the mode in this case would be 3. It is the most popular item. It's a number that occurs the most times. Now, you could have one mode. You could have like two numbers that occur the most amount of times that like tie for first. You might have no modes in there. But when we're talking about data, this might be a very helpful way to look at data. So let's go ahead and look at problem number 1. What are the mean, median, and mode of the bowling scores below? So bowler 1 had a score of 104, bowler 2, 117, and so on, where there's 8 different bowlers, so there's 8 different numbers that we'd have to add together in order to find the mean. All right, so in order to find the mean, we want to find the average, so we're just going to add these all together, all right, and divide it by the number of bowlers, which was 8, and they end up getting 122. So the average is 122. Now we want to find the median. Remember, the word median, we should think of the word middle. So if I put all of these data points in order from smallest to biggest, all right, I want to find the number that's in the middle. Now notice there's 8 values, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So that means there's an even amount. So that means you're going to have 2 numbers in the middle. There's no number right in the middle. So if that's the case, all we have to do is find the average of these two, or the mean of these two values. So 109 plus 113 divided by 2 is 111. All right, so that is the median. The mode is a number that occurs the most. So looking at these data points, which one occurs the most? Well, 104 occurs 3 times, and no other numbers repeat. So 104 occurs the most, so that is the mode. All right. So last question, it says, which measure of central tendency best describes the scores? So what is the best depiction of these scores? Would you find the average? Would you find the median? Or would you find the mode? Well, because there is an outlier, 189, because somebody scored so much better than everybody else, 189, the median is the best measure to describe the scores. Like, basically the idea is 189 is going to inflate the scores. The average might not be the best way to do this. The mean, 122, is greater than most of the scores, and the mode is really low. Like, to say that the average score, or the best depiction of all these things, is 104 doesn't make sense. Even though 3 people had 104, like, there's a lot of people that scored better than them. So 111 is probably the best, probably the best representation of the scores as a whole. All right, that makes sense? Cool. Now, got a question number 1 we don't have to actually do, but we can just kind of talk about it real quick. It says, consider the scores from problem 1 that do not include the outlier 189. So let's pretend 189 didn't exist. So how would I find the mean? I would add these numbers and divide it by 7. All right. How would I find the median? Well, because there's 7 digits, there would be a number right in the middle. That would probably be 109. And then the mode would still be 104. All right. In that case, the mean might be the best way to do it because it doesn't include the outlier. Cool? Cool. All right, now let's go ahead and apply some algebra to this thing. So for problem 2, it says your grades on 3 exams so far are 80, 93, and 91%. What grade do you need to get on the next exam to have an average of 90% on the 4 exams? So let's say you want to find an average of 4 numbers, so we would add 4 numbers together and divide it by 4. The problem is we don't have the fourth score yet, so we're going to put a variable x. Now we do know that all of this is supposed to equal 90. So I set this whole equation equal to 90. Then I just go ahead and simplify using my order of operations. I want to simplify all of these numbers by adding together. So 80 plus 93 plus 91 is 264. And then I can go ahead and solve. I want to get x by itself, and he has two buddies. All right, 264 and 4. I'm going to get rid of the 4 by multiplying by 4 on both sides. Now, why wouldn't I subtract? Well, because this is a grouping symbol. The division sign is technically a grouping symbol. We want to get rid of this first. These two guys are stuck together until that 4 is no more. So when I multiply by 4, I get 360 on this side. Then I can just subtract 264, and that means in order to get a 90 on the average for tests on this next one, I'd have to score a 96%. If I score better than 96, it's over 90, and if I score less than 96, it's less than 90. If I want to get exactly 90%, I have to score 96% on that next test. Let's look at problem number 2. Got it, question number 2. The grades in problem 2 were 80, 93, and 91. So 80%, 93%, and 91. What grade would you have to add? So we're just going to go ahead and put plus, and we don't know what the value is, x. All right, what grade would we have to add in order to get an average of 88? Well, this would be the same thing. I add these together, and I would get 263 plus x divided by 4 is equal to 88. Then I would multiply 4 on both sides. And I get 352. Alright, and I would just go ahead and subtract 263 from both sides. 263. This cancels out, and I get x is equal to 89%. So in order to average an 88% on the test, I'd have to score an 89 on this last one, which makes sense. We'd have to have a much higher score compared to on the first example compared to this one, because we were trying to raise the total average. All right, cool. All right, one more thing for us to kind of cover, as we have one more problem to kind of talk about, finding the range. Now the range is really easy. It's just a subtraction problem. Like if I said the scores on the test range from 75% to 98%, all right, we wanted to figure out, well, how many data points are there between those? So the closing prices in dollars of 2 stocks for the first 5 days are shown. What is the range? The range is just a subtraction between the biggest value minus the smallest value. The biggest value minus the smallest value. So the biggest number here is 47. The smallest number is 22. So the range of these values would be 22. We're just subtracting the biggest minus the smallest. All right, the biggest number here looks like it's 36, and the smallest number here is 28. So the range would be 8. All right, they would vary by $8. All right, the biggest to smallest value. Now the mean is just going to be an average, so they found the same thing. That's not even anything tricky. They're just asking to find the range and the mean, and range is just subtraction. All right. That is actually it. We're not going to cover the last two. I guess we can talk about it really quick, but I'm not going to ask you questions. They're saying here if you wanted to add a value to total times, like they're saying these people exercise this much on a treadmill, and then every person adds 5 more minutes. So you can find the mean, median, and mode and just add 5 to them, and then that would change it. But the range wouldn't change. The range would not change. But I'm not even going to ask you that question. So it's a little bit of a free math lesson for you guys. All right, that's all I have for you guys. This is lesson 12.3, measures of central tendency, and that's all I got for you guys. See ya. Peace.